What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm BDLM, coming with my buddy J4Y with another little podcast, Dota On Demand action, talking about the defense tournament that's actually going on as we speak. Some games are going on live, and kind of the nutty stuff that's been going on in that tournament. How's it going, buddy?
It's going well. It's been a while since our last one. We've had some RL things going on. Unfortunately, gotta hate that. But we're back in it. Gonna try to get, like you said, talk about this tournament, see what the kind of interesting things have been going on in it, because there certainly has been quite a few. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I just wanna, before we get too far in on that kind of stuff, I just wanna say, we got a nice little, I guess, being an ex World of Warcraft player, a blue post, a nice little message from the devs, and there's a link to that on our Facebook. So if you want to go to Dota On Demands on Facebook, give us a nice little like. There's a nice little link there that'll tell you about the upcoming patch if you haven't heard about that. And, I have a little bone to pick, if you don't mind. Can I get a little rage off my chest?
Already?
Do you mind?
I guess.
Yes. So they in this little nice little message about the upcoming patch. They're like, yeah, we're gonna do two heroes. I guess I'm gonna ruin it a little bit. And there's been 3 weeks since a patch. And they're like, holidays and such, we're gearing back up, we're getting back into the swing, trying to keep up with a hero week. And people, legitimately angry that, the holidays exist, I guess. Oh, are you serious? Oh, being lazy. It's like, come on, people. 2 major holidays a week, you can't... Internet's made so many trolls, but what can you do? Unfortunately, that's affected us too. We want to do this regularly, and we're coming to you on a Saturday instead of a Tuesday. Hopefully, we can get a regular schedule going up soon. And I have been working on getting the casts up to iTunes, but again, holidays, deal with it. All you crazy internet trolls out there. So let's talk about this crazy tournament. We've gone through some of the games in the opening stages of the tournament, the first group stage, and we're going to talk about, actually, I think for the first time we're going to go a little in depth on an item, Hand of Midas, which has actually been picked up several times this tournament so far. And I think the first thing we're going to talk about in there is where it was picked up in Navi versus Lowland Lions on a Skeleton King, nonetheless, by Dendi.
Right. Yeah. That already sets you off, because you're like, oh, it's Skeleton King. He's never ever picked except for in public games where he stomps. But yeah, Hand of Midas. Definitely a controversial item, to say the least. We've talked about it a lot on Nature's Prophet, which is, I guess, the most common place you've seen it, if you ever do see it in a game. Basically, for those who are like, what is a Hand of Midas? It's essentially attack speed, use the the Gloves of Haste, and you upgrade them with a recipe. So it's a total, I believe, 1,500 gold item. And
1,900.
It's 1,900?
It's 1,400 for the recipe and 500 for the Gloves of Haste.
Thought. That's terrible. Great. So, yeah, essentially, and what you can do is do you know the cooldown on it? I believe it's 2 minutes more, 3 minutes maybe, 2.5.
I'm sorry, I can't know everything, Jay.
You have to. You're the professor's assistant. The professor doesn't actually know anything. It's the assistant that actually knows everything.
There you go.
But yeah, essentially, it's a pretty long cooldown, and you can use it on any creep that's not a super creep, of course, like a mega creep. But what it does is instantly convert that creep into gold, giving you 190 instead of whatever its original value, and also giving you bonus experience. I'm not exactly sure how much, but so essentially, it's a farming item, I guess you could say. And then, yeah, we saw it on a Skeleton King. Now, what are you thinking in terms of Skeleton King? Is that a good idea?
It's funny you should ask, because I actually made one of our friends do this. Made Terps do it in one game. I think I picked Crystal Maid, and he was like, who should I go? I'm like, go Skeleton King and pick up Hand of Midas first item, because I actually wanted to see how this works in other games. I don't know if you guys have seen the game or not, but in this game, basically, SK is allowed to free farm. Lowland Lions, they do a really good job getting around the map, getting to other lanes, ganking them. They put up a lot of pressure. They get a nice early lead, but they leave SK in the bottom lane. They let him push through the lane completely eventually. And, he gets these Gloves of Haste and gets the Hand of Midas first item and just farms with it flat out. And so, I'm playing in a pub game with it, not as much success, actually. It's kind of the problem with an item like Hand of Midas. It's an investment in future gold, but what it actually gives you at the moment when you pick it up is not much. It's just the attack speed, like you were saying. And actually, the other game in the tournament where we saw Hand of Midas picked up was in EG versus Panzer, where a Faceless Void picked it up, actually, as his first or second item. Did you check and see if he got it before Steam Boots or not?
Um, no,
I think
honestly, I think he did. I think he got like boots, and then that was it.
Okay. Well, yeah, so we saw kind of another situation where it was more of a carry race because it was Anti-Mage versus Faceless, to see who could get bossist by the end of the game. Um,
Bossed.
yeah, yeah, very controversial, like you said. Like I said, it secures endgame farm, but it leaves you kind of useless earlier on.
Yeah, I don't know about useless, but I mean, it doesn't contribute as much. Yeah, I mean, like you said, it does take a while to pay itself off. It's a heavy investment, and you have to ensure that you're going to be able to keep farming really well in the game to make up for the fact that you just spent 1,900 gold on a pair of gloves, essentially. So, I mean, in some cases, yeah, it does. I think it does pay off, or it does work out. Especially at a hero such as, like you said, Skeleton King with his crits and lifesteal. And the more he attacks, obviously, he's going to be a pretty dominating force, as well as other heroes, which we're going to get into later, because we do see it more than once in this tournament, believe it or not. But yeah, I do think it does have potential, but at the same time, it depends on the other team. If they have a carry that did not pick it up and instead went for a big item like a Battle Fury, or I don't know, even a Manta, depends on the hero, I guess. But either way, you could be left in the dust because when those team fights roll around and you only have a Hand of Midas and like a partially finished next item, and they have their first big item, I mean, that could cost you the team fight.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what we saw in the EG versus Panzer game. I mean, the attack speed on Faceless Void is very useful. You want to try and get those time lock procs, allow you to keep people in place that you beat on them more, gives you more chances to proc time lock. So you can actually just kind of chain stun somebody in place if you get lucky enough. And so picking up that attack speed is really smart. And like you were saying with Skeleton King, that means there's more chance for crits, which get ridiculous when you start maxing out that ability. So yeah, and like you were saying, we actually saw in that game, the EG versus Panzer, both Anti-Mage and Faceless Void wound up going for a Battle Fury. Then Anti-Mage actually finishes Mana Styles, and Faceless Void has the Hand of Midas, but then no other second big item. He didn't have enough time with the Hands of Midas in order to get that kind of growing lead. And actually, you think about it, in League of Legends are gold per 10 items. And it's kind of that same deal where you're getting some small basic benefits, but you really kind of need time to go on. At least, I believe you need the game to go at least 30 some minutes before you actually start seeing a huge benefit from those gold per 10 items.
Yeah, and I mean, around the 30-minute mark, if the other carry was left to farm really well, and in that case, in the EG versus Panzer, the anti-mage was 5-0 and just crazy farmed. Like, at that point, you're already way behind. Like, if your team was doing a good job keeping him down, then okay, maybe then it's going to turn out to be worth it. But like I said, since he had such an explosive start, and you weren't keeping up now because you have a Hand of Midas, so I mean that game had some back and forths to say the least. But yeah, I don't generally like to see this on a carry like very often at all. Especially the other thing I wanted to talk about with that is the fact that Faceless Void, yeah, he started out. He didn't even rush it. He went boots, and I think it might have even been treads before. I'm not exactly sure, but the point is, he didn't like go straight for the Hand of Midas. He was kind of getting other things along the way, and an item like that, where the sooner you get it, more often you can use it, and the more, I guess, the quicker it pays itself off. I first of all don't agree with that, and second of all, he went Battle Fury second, so he went 2 gold farming items in a row, and I think that's just overkill. Like, at that point, you really need to get more. I mean, not that Battle Fury is bad for team fighting, but I would like to see either a Manta style or even a Butterfly, something that helps him survive and do more damage in fights, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the Hand of Midas is definitely an inferior item compared to Battle Fury for farming. And so it's like you get the Hand of Midas to help you farm faster, and so but you're still, because all it gives you is the attack speed, it's not helping you kill creeps that much faster itself. So yeah, you almost want to pick up something on top of that. I think you're on the right track there, thinking like Mana Style, something that sort of gives you not really a cleave, but now you have images that are also doing damage for you to other creeps. So it does increase your farm potential while also giving you stats and damage on top of that. So yeah, I think you're right there. That probably would have been a better option than going for the Battle Fury as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, in addition, his images do work in his chronosphere, so that's just
Yeah,
more
that's very
damage
true.
than that small. Yeah, the whole point of that hero is to initiate on a team with his ultimate and be able to at least kill one, if not like two or more heroes in that fight.
Hmm.
And like that way, you start at an advantage, 5 versus 4, 3 or whatever. And so obviously, the more damage you can do, the better it is, the more bursty damage, I guess I should say. So that's why sometimes you'll even see like Mask of Madness in like pub games, something just like he needs to do as much damage as possible. And Hand of Midas is not going to really cut that. I mean, it's going to be decent, but it's not going to be as effective, like we were saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. You see in other games, I remember when you watch StarCraft 1 games, people would go like three bases, like right off the bat, like no defense whatsoever. But because of the way the metagame was developed at that point, people were just like, yeah, go ahead, get your economy going for the first 10, 15 minutes. I'm going to get mine going for the first 10, 15 minutes. Then we duke it out. So I think it'll be interesting to see if kind of Hands of Midas starts showing up on both sides of the board, so you're no longer at that kind of little bit of disadvantage in the beginning of the game. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that works itself out. But I think the next thing we want to talk about in this defense tournament and kind of this expanded what the nuts segment is the Batrider pickup, which we actually saw several times as well. A hero that we got to see from time to time in Dota 1. We get to see him finally coming to the forefront in Dota 2.
Yeah, it's taken a while, in my opinion, for him to finally get picked up, especially due to the reason that his main purpose, at least I think, is to counter those hard carries or even semi carries, I guess, that you really have trouble with in team fights. Essentially, he's got that ultimate that goes through magic immunity and locks down someone for up to 5 seconds, I think, at the last rank, and that's just so crucial to locking down, especially heroes like Anti-Mage, and that's why I'm saying I'm surprised it took this long, because Anti-Mage was picked in like picked or banned in every single game in at least the earlier tournaments, and now even he's still in the forefront. Let's be honest, he's still a strong hero, and I mean, Batrider could be so effective at locking him down and getting your team able to kill him.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. One of the games where we actually see Batrider is in the Dignitas versus its Gosu game. And you weren't as impressed in this game as I was, but I just thought it was so funny how well the team played against Faceless Void. There was so much just sitting on the edge of that ultimate, and there was actually one point where Faceless Void drops his ultimate, and Batrider walks up the edge of it, ulties Faceless, and drags him out of his own ultimate in order to save his teammate. I was just like, that is so cool, and that's really a hero that Batrider is effective against. These heroes, like you said, Anti-Mage as well, that have that mobility, and that's really what makes those heroes so strong. You think Weaver too, these heroes that can just get away from you, and you miss out on opportunities. And if you're spending the resources of 2, 3 heroes to try and kill them, and they get away, that's a lot of time lost. That's a lot of gold loss that you could have been farming. It can put you at a really big disadvantage.
Absolutely. I mean, he does. He's also a great laner too. I mean, he's a nice ranged hero with the oil, his Q ability. He can stack that up on people and just hit for a ton of extra damage, and also slow people. And then that Firefly, he's so hard to gank because of that. That's what makes him wonderful. I mean, that lets him fly and go over trees and any kind of land. Cliffs, what have you. And I mean, he's just such a strong hero. I really, like I said, I'm really surprised it's taken this long for him to, but I'm really glad to see him now. And it's kind of changing the way people are thinking about picks and bans, which is, kind of what I liked. I like to see the meta morph into something else.
Yeah, I think the first time I was truly impressed by Batrider was actually in a pub game where it's kind of hard to describe, but the right side of the river, this Batrider ulted somebody, and then basically he flew off into this little tiny pool of water on the far right side of the map, so that he couldn't be attacked really by any of the melee heroes, but he was still holding the person right there at the edge with the ulti, and he was still able to do damage. I'm like, wow, that's just really crazy that you can really put yourself in really advantageous positions with that Firefly, and it's really good against people like Prophet, who's going to try and trap you in the trees, use Firefly, burn down the trees. We actually saw that in one of the games where Prophet used Sprout on, I forget what hero it was, but he sprouted a different hero, and in comes Batrider. He just burns down the trees and lets his buddy get out. It's a really cool use. We also saw him in EG versus Panzer. In both cases, though, interesting enough, Batrider picks up a Blink Dagger, which, obviously we've seen before in Dota 1.
So it's safe to say him and Smokey the Bear would not get along very well, essentially.
No, there are plenty of forest fires. That is for sure.
He doesn't do a good job, preventing them, I think.
No, he doesn't. He just, light and fire as he goes, just throwing him over his shoulder. It's a whole debacle. Yeah, him and Prophet don't get along at all. That's for sure.
Well, I don't like Prophet. But anyways, that was just a hand grab. Anyways, so you were, I guess, going into Dignitas versus Gosu. Sorry, that's all I was thinking about was forest fires.
I left you off this nice little note about Blink Dagger, and you just go on about Smokey the Bear. I don't even know.
Because Smokey's my homeboy. Blink Dagger, yes, that is an item. And it's also seed on Batrider. Generally, it's
good input. Thank you.
I know. No, it's generally it's rushed on him, and the reason I say that, it's kind of like I want to compare Batrider to Tiny, or Tiny. I was right in the sense that he just rushes that Blink Dagger. The reason being, that's how he's able to perform whatever his deadly either combo or move set is, and like in this case with Batrider, he's able to get right up next to the person that like an anti-mage or faceless, someone who's normally able to just react and just either blink or time leap or whatever move they have and escape, Murano leap, etc. If he has that Blink Dagger, he can just get right in their face and ulti right away, and they don't even have time to react, and that's really essential, because if you don't have that Blink Dagger in him, it's like, oh, here I come, and it's like, oh, okay, I can easily see you, and you're also setting fire to everything along the way, so I think I'm going to leave now. But no, just like I said with Tiny, it's a similar thing where, okay, now I'm right up in your face, I'm going to perform my moves, and my team hopefully will be behind me to follow up on that so we can get the kill.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, because you think about that, it makes sense, but it's also a little counterintuitive, because it's like, yeah, I'm going to blink on top of somebody as an int ranged hero. Like, you could just get blown up pretty easily, and we actually saw, I believe in the Dignitas versus its Gosu game, Vanguard was the second item picked up by Batrider to give himself some of that stayability, so, if he does get targeted while he tries to ulti somebody, he will survive at least long enough to finish the channel on his ulti. Or not the channel, but the duration of his ulti.
Yeah, you'll generally see, it's either one or the other. It's either he'll rush a Blink Dagger, or he'll go the treads into Vanguard to blink. And I mean, I guess it depends on how the game's going, and if you need to set up more ganks on those people with escapes or whatever, but in the end, yeah, you're right. I mean, he does need to be able to survive, because he is a weak end hero. I think he might have more strength than other end heroes, but he's still weak, and yeah, he does need that kind of help, and he also, let's be honest, he really can't kill many people by himself. I mean, he does some decent burst damage, but it's not great, and he really needs that backup from his team to really finish people off. Kind of unlike Tiny. That's, I guess, where they differ greatly.
Yeah, I mean, Batrider is so good against melee heroes, especially just because of the slow that he can apply with that Q. And you just get him in. If you can get enough of those stacks up and they don't kind of really realize how slow they're turning and moving and stuff, you can really easily just Firefly over top of them, and the damage that does is significant. And then the Flame Break, too. Nice little stun move knockback thing there, just a nice little weapon in the arsenal as well, making it very viable. No, that's very true, but that's the nice thing about the Q. You get to apply that slow enough, hopefully, that makes the Flame Break a little bit easier to land. And I mean, it's not like a long stun or anything, but still a nice little thing to have in your back pocket, about from time to time.
I have something in my back pocket for you.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I mean, no, like we were saying, I really do like seeing him picked up, and I do like him in the games where he was picked to counter either that face or anti-mage. And obviously, I believe each time he was picked up, it paid off. I think that both teams with Bad Rider that we just mentioned won. So
Hmm.
obviously, good idea in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we'll see heroes and you're like, yeah, their team won, but how much can we really say it's because of this hero? Like, I had that problem the first time we saw Dragonite. I'm like, yeah, he did some stuff, but I'm still not convinced that it's because of this Dragonite that they won. But like I said, we had that time when Batrider ultied Faceless Void, pulled him out of his own ultimate, and it's like, yeah, that's something that no other hero is going to be able to do really. Um, that is Faceless Void's just killing zone right there inside that ultimate, and you're really not going to find many other heroes that can get him out of that.
No, I mean, yeah, absolutely. That I would agree, and I would also like to now change the subject a little bit.
I would before you do, I would just like to say it. We've seen Faceless a lot more in this tournament than we have in other ones.
Oh yeah, no, he's definitely
Interesting to
coming
see.
up, and I really, me too. It's nice to see new agility heroes in the mix. And actually, in this tournament, Bounty Hunter is not in captain's mode, so we're not seeing him.
Mm.
But I think in the next one, there's quite a possibility just because of his amazing burst and escape. He's got such great abilities for those team fights. I think we will actually see him picked up, and that'll be interesting because now teams would have to adjust to that. A lot more vision required. Like we said, I mean, there's always been Ricky in the pool, but you never
Hmm.
see him. And I mean, it's probably just due to the fact that his only specialty is something that can be countered by a good pro team.
Yeah, I can only think of one game off the top of my head where he was actually picked up, and he was like last surprise picked, and he's still lost. Because yeah, he's a strong hero, but he can be handled fairly well. But yeah, Faceless is one of those big three heroes that we always talk about that are just so strong and can carry the game. But he's actually the one we've seen the least lately, so it's kind of nice to see him. So nice little friend. But yeah, go ahead, change the subject. I'll let you go wherever you find yourself.
All right. Well, we already discussed Hannah Midas, and that would, of course, tied into how Skeleton King just dominated that Navi versus Little Lion.
Lowland Lions.
I wanted to say Little Lion Man from that song.
What?
The
What song?
It's called Little Lion Man.
No, I disagree.
Are you
You and your
sure? Do
songs
you
are.
want to put money on this? I
I'm
bet you
googling
five
right now.
viewers.
Oh my god, Little Lion Man.
Little Lion
Who's it
Man by
by?
Mumford and Sons. Get wrecked.
Oh gosh,
Get
you're
wrecked.
ridiculous.
Anyways, I'm gonna call it Little Lion Man.
Thank you.
No one knows
Yeah,
him
you know
anyways.
what?
It's okay. So Little Lion Man got rolled, and then into E.G. Panzer, who is completely not related to that. I kind of was interested in the way the picks and bans went for this game. And that's something I always like to. Like it does. First of all, take about 12, 15 minutes of every video you might watch. The first 15 minutes are about picks and bans, and I
Hmm.
mean that just shows how much time is like how important of a game that is. Like if they invest that much time thinking about, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to counter this? It's something I think worth discussing in a lot of cases, especially in this one, where so it's Evil Geniuses versus Panzer Team, and the bans have not been what I've expected at all. Like for example, in the earlier tournaments, you would see Anti-Mage banned pretty much at least half the games, if not more. And
Yeah, I
like,
mean, you think about it, Navi actually for a lot of their earlier games, first two bans, Animage Lich,
yeah,
every time.
yeah, and I mean there's no questioning it. I mean essentially Anti-Mage something to be reckoned with at this point in the game, and there's not a lot in this hero pool that can counter him too much, or at least we thought, and that might be changing now. But yeah, instead you're seeing actually like heroes like Omni Knight, Broodmother. I even saw a Shadow Shaman band in the first couple
Hmm.
bands, and I was just these things are just throwing me off. It's like unless someone on that team is like that's their best hero. It's like, okay, we just absolutely do not want him to play Shadow Shaman because he is going to roll us. Respect bans, that's what we call them. That's what we call them in the business.
In the biz.
In the bee's knees. But yeah, so in this game in particular, I'm going to tap more. EG banned Broodmother Tide, and then Enigma Pugna in their second set. So, why do you think they were so scared of a pushing team here? Like, in the meta, honestly, we don't see pushing strat. We've only seen a couple. Mostly it's just a farm fest. Why do you think they were so worried?
I'm not really sure. I mean, the thing about push teams, especially you have to play differently against them a lot. You have to be really mobile, and maybe EG just had a plan in mind, and they were like, what could really mess us up is getting a push team. Maybe they just really wanted Faceless and Nature's Prophet to get to the end of the game. It's kind of funny. I mentioned before we started this cast up, I actually saw in one of the games in this first group stage, Crystal Maiden got banned. And it's funny, we see Tidehunter here, Windrunner's also banned in this game. A lot of these heroes are really strong heroes, but it's nice the kind of balance they strike because they're so strong, but they're not strong enough to get banned all the time. Like we're talking Animage Lich, they obviously do get picked up from time to time, but plenty of games where they are just not even up for grabs because teams just take them out right away. And so it's not really surprising to see like Windrunner and Tide banned, but it is interesting to see that they would choose to do that. Pugna, I think, is a really strange one. I haven't seen enough out of Panzer to really say, do they pick up Pugna all the time, unfortunately. But, Broodmother does get banned quite a bit. Night Stalker gets picked quite a bit. So I probably in this case it was a lot to do with just what they wanted to do in the game and what they thought could stop them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because, like you're saying, Anti-Mage, Prophet, Brood, and Night Stalker were probably the most common 4 starting bans, or maybe Lich, throw that in the mix. And now you only see at least maybe even half of those. And that's leaving these heroes to be picked up in the game, like Prophet. Prophet's actually been played a lot in these games, not getting banned instead. And it's interesting to note that. And I mean, the thing with Prophet is that this hero is so effective at jungling, setting up those early ganks, and then pushing in the late game that you would think, okay, yeah, why is he not getting banned? But then again, these teams are not having trouble against him. I mean, in the 2 games you mentioned, EG to Panzer and Dignitas versus Gosu, Prophet was on the losing team both times.
Yeah, we could say Batrider is part of that reason too. He, like we were saying earlier, he can destroy those trees, and Sprout is sort of a crowd control. It's not even really one I wouldn't even list it as a crowd control. It has the potential to, but there are really so many ways out of it. A while ago, while we're talking about the defense, it's a join Dota tournament. The caster for join Dota, Toby, he was like, yeah, I think Nature's Prophet's the most imbalanced hero in the game right now. And I really had a hard time with that statement because, Prophet, he can port around a lot, but he really doesn't do as much as people give him the credit for. You carry a Tango, and one of his moves is, useless. And Batrider, instead of, using Tangos to get rid of it, he can just use the Firefly and get out of that no problem. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how, we're going to see the picks change over time, of course. And, all of a sudden, a hero that we think is strong all along is all of a sudden really not as good as we once thought.
Yeah, and I mean, also something to note about those 2 games in particular, Prophet was actually first picked on both those teams, and then Anti-Mage was picked right after on both teams, the other team. So,
interesting.
It was like, oh, you picked Prophet? Okay, I'll take Anti-Mage, who you just now can't even gank with Prophet. Okay. And
yeah, I mean, you think about it, Panzer have 2 heroes that the Sprout doesn't affect, essentially. And then you have DK, who's probably going to survive most of the stuff you throw at him during this little Sprout period. So, yep, very interesting indeed.
Indubitably.
Are you done yapping about the picks and bans here, or did you have other stuff you want to talk about?
Well, I just want to throw out one thing that was funny.
Okay.
When we were looking at that Dignitas versus Gosu game, the 5th pick for its Gosu, because they already had Prophet, Faceless, Vino, and Ancient Apparition, and then they went with Juggernaut. And we were all like, what? Like, they already had a hard carry and, like, all this stuff, and they're like, oh, now let's have a second one. And then, but they remade the game, and apparently that is not who they actually wanted, believe it or not. And they went with Beastmaster. But I wanted to see that. I don't know why. Just because probably Juggernaut's never picked, but that would have been
Well,
funny.
you build Augment Scepter on them, and you just ulti all over the place.
Boots of Travel, Augment Scepter.
Mean, there you go. How does I beat
And
it?
Force Staff, because that's just, you get that on everyone.
Well, you gotta force staff your way up to the hero, and then ulti them.
We just made the new kingdom. Okay.
There you go. Actually, someone I don't, not a friend really, but somebody we play with from time to time builds force staff on Skelly King. I'm still trying to figure that one out. I guess it's kind of a lot like when people would build force staff on Pudge, kind of get the extra range out of the hook. I guess it's force staff stun, but yeah. Anyway, let's talk about, I think, the game that I'm actually the most excited to talk about, because we finally see a hero who gets banned fairly regularly, being Broodmother, in the Fnatic MSI versus Praetor Cunctus game. And you better not say that one 3 times fast from a girl, because you will get slapped.
Oh, that is truth. Do you want to go over? You are the one that has the picks and bans for that, sir.
Oh, I do. It's really awesome. This is the picks and bans for this game. I think are just all about Broodmother. To be honest, like as soon as I saw the Broodmother pick, I used to look back and forth like, "Yep, that's a counter to Broodmother. Yep, that's a counter to Broodmother. Yep, that's a counter to Broodmother." I'm just gonna go through them real quick. We have for Praetor, Anti-Mage Lich, Shadow Shaman Clockwork, and then Dark Seer. And this is to fight a Windrunner Broodmother, Tidehunter, Venomancer, and Weaver team. The bans Night Stalker, Omni Knight, Viper Pudge for Praetor, and then the Fnatic bans were Prophet, Sand King, Enigma, and Shaker. So I think very interesting. You know, the thing that kind of interested me about the game the most is the fact that it's kind of an argument for and against Broodmother simultaneously. It's like Broodmother's really strong. You see all that went into trying to stop her, actually. We see Darkseer picked up, someone we never see, just to stop Broodmother. But at the same time, you look at Fnatic, who is the team that picked up Broodmother, and all their bans. Okay, you have Prophet. Yeah, he can have the Treants, and that'll slow down Broodmother. Sand King, he can just Sandstorm on top of the little Spiderlings that can kill him, okay? Enigma, conversions, and the AoE, so, you know, he can really stop the Spiderlings. Shaker, well, Spiderlings means there are going to be more targets for the ulti to bounce off of. Like, there's so much about this Broodmother pick, and yeah, I think it's just crazy.
I mean...
Thoughts?
Do I have to? No, essentially, like you said, they left Anti-Mage on the table, and you never see Sand King banned, let's be honest. This is probably like the first time I've seen, maybe second, I've like ever seen Sand King banned. And the only reasons you would ban him is to stop, or to not counter, like you said, your pick of Broodmother. Like, he does not counter like any other hero, really. I mean, he's a great hero, don't get me wrong. He has some great initiation and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, he's not, I think, ban worthy unless you are deciding to go that Broodmother. And sure enough, that's what they ended up doing. And I mean, getting that Windrunner. And the thing about this game, also, before we get like too into about the Broodmother and Darkseer, the Windrunner and Veno, in my opinions, were the MVPs of this game. And the reason being is because they did such a flippin', I was going to say another word, but I want to go with flippin', good job of setting up so many ganks and, you know, really helping those team fights along. With the thing with Broodmother is that she's obviously an amazing pusher, you know, with that Spiderlings, with the webs. Wow, I don't know how I was forgetting that word. With her webs, you know, she can just sit in the lane all day, regen her health back, not worry about ganks unless they bring a lot of dust or something or wards, and just really push down those lanes against most people. And we'll get into why she had a little trouble this game. But yeah, when she has that ulti popped, you know, she'll do an amazing job of damage, but she still needs some kind of support, and that's where Windrunner and Veno really stepped up to the plate, as well as Tidehunter, I guess, and just really knocked out these people and allowed her to just beat on them with that ultimate, which adds 60 damage. That's just like, oh, okay, here's almost a relic. Have fun.
Yeah, at last rank, that's 100 damage, and insatiable hunger, and then 80% lifesteal. Let's just throw that out there. Really amazing. And also, last rank, the cooldown is 30 seconds, but it lasts 14 seconds. So it's actually kind of a lot like Alchemist's ulti, where you're going to have it whenever you need it. It's just going to be there 9 times out of 10. Like, you're going to be hard pressed to be like, oh crap, my ultimate was on cooldown. Sorry, guys. It's just going to be there for every team fight and every engagement. Like you said, she has stay ability in the lane because of the spin web ability, gives her health regen, movement speed, and invisibility. So even if she gets hurt, she's just going to be able to walk around invis, picking up experience, if not gold. And then if she does get someone coming in to attack her, she can just walk away because she's so quick. And yeah, she can just stay in that lane and just grind away at the towers. You know, we're talking about the push ability too. Not even talking about the bans, look at the picks. Windrunner, the power shot can clear out the little spiderlings. Tidehunter is actually, I think, one of my favorite quote-unquote counters to Broodmother because you just get Anchor Smash and you can kill all the spiderlings very quickly with that. So, I mean, that's easy. You could even say Omni Knight, the heal, would be good for clearing those out. So that's like 6 heroes involved in this game, either the picks or the bans. Well, no, it's more than that because you think Clockwork, Darkseer, you could say Ether Shock from Shadow Shaman, the Q from Lich. I mean, half the heroes involved in this game you could consider somewhat of a counter to Broodmother.
You could, but
Yes.
I don't know about Clockwork as much. I mean, yeah, the rockets are nice, but I think his purpose was just to get some kind of initiation, because you look at their team over there, you know, they have Anti-Mage and Lich and Shadow Shaman, but none of them are really, unless you get a blink really fast on Shadow Shaman, which they did not end up doing, they really have trouble initiating, and that's why, you know, I think Clockwork really fit well in that lineup, just because they had some way to start the fight, keep at least 1 or 2 heroes essentially kind of close together, and then you follow that up with all the Darkseer and the Lich and the explosions, and then hopefully that would result in a winning team fight. Not always the case, unfortunately for them. Can you quickly tell me the picks for MSI again, really quick? Sorry.
No, I cannot. Windrunner, Broodmother, Tidehunter, Phenomancer, and a Weaver.
Oh, Weaver. How could I forget the Weaver pick? Oh my god. Okay. I was like, I was trying to think who that 5th person was. It just wasn't ringing a bell. And he ended up being one of the strongest forces in the game. But
Yeah. I mean, obviously the reason we thought this game was so crazy is because Darkseer and Broodmother. I mean, do you want to go ahead and talk about that Darkseer? I mean, it's somebody we never really get to see, but I think just a fun hero, if nothing else.
no, he's definitely interesting. And I mean, the reason, yeah, obviously he says he picked up here to counter that Broodmother. And the reason he's so good at it is mostly Ion Shell. That's one of his most important things and what he's used for. The fact that, first of all, it's basically a buff you place on either an allied or enemy unit, and surrounding enemy units and heroes that are within 225 radius of that person with that buff takes damage per second. And that starts out at 30 damage, goes all the way up to 75 damage per second at the last rank. That's a 7-second cooldown and a 15-second duration, meaning you could have it on 2 targets at the same time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we saw that actually. There was Darkseer. I forget who came to help him, but Darkseer was fighting against Broodmother, and someone came up and, you know, Darkseer got really, really low, and at the last second he throws Iron Shell on the second target, and the DPS from both of those is finally enough to bring down Broodmother.
Another interesting thing about that, when you're going against Broodmother, is you can throw an Ion Shell on Broodmother herself, and usually when you have those spiderlings, you kind of control all of them in one group. But if you do that with her and the Iron Shell's on you, you're going to kill all your minions. So you have to be better about microing them, so that's kind of an interesting thing too. But yeah, so anyways, the Iron Shell, really important for clearing out waves, killing out those minions. It also has a vacuum, which is also useful. It starts out as a 275 radius. It goes up by 100 every time you rank it up. It starts out only at 40 damage. It goes to 160. So obviously its purpose is not for damage, but rather to control or displace, I should say. Because what it essentially does is vacuums, or it sucks all the players and units in this AoE radius to the center of that radius, that circle you casted. So essentially, it puts everyone in one little tiny area, and then you follow up with a Lich Ult and you win. Well, that's the idea, of course. That 60-second cooldown, by the way. Not very short, and that doesn't change, so that's kind of unfortunate. But let me just finish off here. Surge, 3-second duration. This goes all the way up 7.5 seconds. It's only 20 mana cost at the first rank, too. I mean, you get to use it all day long. And the reason... Oh, I'll finish up. Wall Replica. Okay. So this is an interesting move because it essentially
Did you
puts
happen
this
to
long
mention
wall.
that Surge made you faster?
Do I have to?
I don't think you did.
Because, well, you know what? Sometimes it does that. If you're lucky. Okay. It makes you faster, okay? No. Yeah, you can cast it on an ally or yourself. Like you said, it makes you faster. And it starts out at 3-second duration, all the way up 7.5. So essentially, you can GTFO out of wherever you need to get out of. Finally, Wall of Replica. Oh, it's max move speed, isn't it? I think so. Wall of Replica. Can I talk about this, please? Thanks. It's essentially this wall.
You might say. Some would call it a wall.
Call it a wall. I call
Others
it.
might call it a barrier of sorts.
Anyways, it's a pretty big line, and what essentially it does is anytime an enemy hero walks through it, they take 150 damage, either direction, and then they create an image, or you create an image of them, so it's under your control. And essentially, that image takes 250% extra damage, so it's pretty squishy, but it does, at the first rank, 70% of that hero's damage, up to 90% at the last rank. They actually last, I believe, like 15 seconds or something pretty long. So, a really great thing to put down, and if someone, like teams are trying to push into your base, whatever, you just throw that in the entrance, vacuum them towards it, and then you have this whole set of 5 heroes, if you can do it well enough, I guess, that works really well. So I guess I'll let you start out with comments, then I'll go in after that. What do you think about this beautiful, sexy hero? And his beard. And his beard.
Well, the beard is, of course, amazing.
Yes.
It's just fantastic. He's a purple Santa Claus in a lot of ways.
Yes, that's right.
The thing I thought was kind of unfortunate about this game is, you think about it, there's a ton of these AoE moves that you could say work to stop Broodmother, but there's also so much that synergizes with that vacuum. Let's say you're able to suck all 5 of those heroes in. What do you have? You have Rocket by Clockwork. You have the Wall by Clockwork that could catch several heroes in it. You have the Ether Shock by Shadow Shaman. You have the Lich Ultimate. You have the Lich Nuke. I can't remember the name of the Q. My bad. This is my one slip up. Doing some AoE damage there. You also have the Anti-Mage Ultimate, which is an AoE as well. So there's a ton of damage they can do. And of course, Iron Shell by Darkseer himself. I mean, there's a lot of potential there to do AoE damage and make them pay for it. And, you know, there were a couple missteps, I think, along the way in this game. Darkseer and Lich, they couldn't sync up the ultimate with the vacuum. Darkseer, in a lot of team fights, he would drag people to the wall's edge, but because he put the center of it maybe on the wall or maybe a little bit in front of the wall, they didn't pass over it, creating the image. You know, I think a lot of missteps, probably mostly because you're never thinking, well, I need to be good at that Darkseer, because what if I need him in this game, you know?
Yeah, they probably don't practice him very often, or not as often as the other heroes. But, yeah, the reason, of course, he's picked up is to counter Broodmother. And so the reason being, we already discussed Iron Shell. Obviously, it's going to dominate his creeps, but Surge is the other reason. Now, Broodmother has a passive slow, which you discussed, you know, which does, it's the way she pretty much kills people one-on-one, is she'll slow and then pop her ultimate, and she'll just whittle you down. But with Surge, you just take that slow away, you just go max move speed. He can just get away from her with, you know, very little trouble. And that's why I think he's like the perfect counter to her, at least in laning phase. You know, late game, okay, maybe not as much. But the other awesome thing with this hero, this Darkseer hero, is if you get Aghamon's Scepter, if you get that much farm. What that does is allows you to create illusions of your allied units that walk through it. So now, if you can suck their heroes through that wall, you get their images, and then your allies go through the wall, you get their images. So you essentially have like an army of like 15 people. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, and when you have a hero like Anti-Mage on your team, you know, he might also pick up mana styles. I mean, who's who? You really don't even know. I mean,
just don't fight Earthshaker.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, he was banned out, so no worries there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of potential with that Darkseer pick, that's for sure. The other cool thing about the ultimate is it actually lasts a really long time. So between him and Shadow Shaman, they kind of had this. We should be able to handle Broodmother, but if worse comes to worse and we have to turtle in the base, our team's also very good at that too.
Yeah, with Lich too, of course. I mean, yeah, they did have a really strong turtling team and initiation. They had a good lineup overall, but so did MSI, of course, and you couldn't deny that. You know, the Windrunner with the amazing CC, the Vino with the pushing capabilities, Tidehunter with his ultimate. You can never. Oh my gosh, it's just so rude. And then eventually the Weaver, and that's also the other thing with this game is that the Weaver just got amazing free farm and kills. He ended the game at like 10-0 or something, like just dominating. And essentially any carry, even though most people don't call Weaver a hard carry actually, just because when you look at the late game, like him versus Anti-Mage should win that if they have equal farm. You know?
Yeah, I mean, what Weaver is really good at is getting in and out of fights, weaving in and out,
Ooh.
being able to put up a good amount of damage, but keep himself safe. But in the fight, you think about it, Anti-Mage, if you get him down 80%, he's sitting at 20, he's probably going to blink away and just go back and heal. He doesn't really want to risk his own death. Nice thing about Weaver, you can risk 200% of your health, really, if you think about it, because you can both Shibupi around, allowing you to move in and out of the fight, in and out of combat. If you get focused, you just invis, run away, come right back in, and start it up again, and hopefully they won't target you again. You also have the ultimate, which will give you a certain amount of your health back, depending on how fast you lost the health, but potentially a whole nother health bar. So he's really good at being a constant stream of damage throughout a fight, whereas you might consider heroes like Faceless, I guess, is just being a lot of upfront and, like you said, with the ultimate, trying to take somebody out right away, try and get them out of the fight as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, the other great thing on Weaver is if you do get a farm like that and you build that Radiance really quick, he's just even more of a nuisance to deal with, because not only now is he doing all those shapupis or whatever you call them these days, all his other annoying AoE stuff and his Gemini attacks, but then now he's a Radiance burn the whole fight. And that's why you're like, oh, we gotta kill him, because this is just annihilating us over time. And then you try to, and he just, goes back, and he's like, oh, sup, I'm at full health again. And you get frustrated and want to quit the game. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a weird hero. I mean, if you can make the team fights last a long time, then yeah, really good pickup. But the trick is, don't let him weave in and out. Obliterate the team and don't let the fights last long enough for him to be really effective. Broodmother, like you were saying, yeah, the incapacitating bite, that passive, grants mischance, slow, and then additional damage to that target. A really nice passive ability. Really helps her hunt people down. Like you said, that and the ultimate combined, you can just take somebody out relatively quickly. We actually saw Broodmother pick up an Orchid Malevolence in this game. I think a really solid pickup. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's, I think, a very, not super common, but still a very good idea. First of all, just the item itself adds that damage. It adds the mana, tons of mana regen and intellect, so he can spam his spawn broodlings all day and not have to worry about his mana pool. Also, though, the fact that it silences a target and makes them take extra damage for a decent duration. And when you look up what they're against, an Anti-Mage, first of all, that's a no-brainer. Now he can't blink and takes extra damage. Or even the Dark Seer, just in the fact that, he usually can surge away. But if you put that on him, now he's stuck, and you can probably finish him off, because he's not a super tanky hero most of the time. So, no, very, very strong pickup. You'd like to see also Blackening Bar on him, Broodmother. Also, just because, if he can't be CC'd, he's going to lifesteal all that health back. And then essentially he's going to just be a wrecking force in team fights. So that's why generally you would see that maybe first prioritized. But in this game, they weren't team fighting as much. It was more just kind of farm fest in each lane, and Broodmother was kind of doing her own thing. She's like, okay, you know what? I'm just getting my Orchid. I'm going to win my lane now with it, and then I'll worry about BKB.
Yeah, I mean, I think, too, you see, in pub games, a lot of Soul Ring, a lot of Ring of Basilius. to try and keep up enough mana to be able to use the spawn spiderlings, be able to put your webs wherever you want to as soon as you can, to be able to do the harassing damage with the spiderlings, and to just keep creating your pushing army. And picking up the Orchid Malevolence is going to ensure that you have the regen and the intellect to just be able to do that. And so I think a really good alternative to sort of those really cheap mana regeneration items. And it makes a lot of sense. You get a lot of damage out of that ulti, and because you can have it up so often at the last rank, you don't really need to build a lot of agility items on her, even though she's an agility hero. You don't need to get your damage from there. So getting it from a source like Orchid Malevolence, I think, is a really smart decision.
Yeah, that's kind of similar. When you were talking about that, I was thinking about Drow in a similar sense, how her ultimate gives her just tons of agility. And so essentially, she still builds, generally decent damage items, but and she actually, you'll see her mostly go BKB as one of her first items as well, just because she's like, okay, I already have damage, but I need to survive. So it's similar to Broodmother, I guess, in that way. So yeah, no, I definitely agree. She already they already have this big damage from their ultimates and their moves. They don't really need to build that farming big damage item or whatever. And Broodmother especially, like, she's just one of the best farmers in the game, and pushers. Just that's why. I mean, she can just push her lane down and usually have no trouble. Of course, when she doesn't face like a Dark Seer or Sand King, she'll have no trouble. But yeah, and you could just leave her in a solo, even against 2 or 3 heroes sometimes, and she'll still get the farm she needs just because of her webs. Like, until the other team starts really countering her with those sentry wards, she usually has like no issues at all.
Yeah, I mean, because like we were mentioning earlier, it's invisibility, health regen, and movement speed. So even if you get the wards to Seer, she's probably going to be able to get out unless you send 2 or 3 heroes to go kill her. And that's a big commitment to send that many heroes. I think it's interesting, actually, in that game, the first time Darkseer's killed, you see that kind of commitment from the enemy team. They have 3 heroes in that top lane to try and take him down because he's similarly very hard to deal with. He can kind of just sit in the lane with his shell, surge away if he gets into trouble, and he has a pretty good amount of survivability himself. I believe in this game, picks up Vanguard first item and then goes in that Augment Scepter, so picking up tank ability first and then getting the kind of utility with his ultimate. It's funny too, in this game, Darkseer doesn't pick up his ulti until way late in the game, and that makes way too much sense. But I think like I do this, and when I've played Darkseer, I pick up the ulti at level 6 just because in your head you're like, ultimate, it's awesome. So you just kind of pick it up. But really, this Darkseer realized, Vacuum Surge, Ion Shell, these are all very important to dealing with Broodmother, and they're just very awesome on their own. There's no need to go for that ultimate right away, which may or may not be useful when all of these abilities I have at low levels are just awesome, period.
Right. I mean, his ultimate is obviously a team fight ultimate. That's very obvious. And it's really only beneficial when there's enemy heroes to make use of it. And so generally, there's not too many situations outside of pushing a tower or a base that you're going to use it well enough or, to justify having it. So yeah, like I agree with you. He really needs to. There's not necessarily a purpose to pick that up too early in the game. You might as well wait until you have. And it's similar kind of. Windrunner does a similar thing. She usually doesn't pick up her ultimate until she's ready to start pushing towers. Because generally you never use that on a hero unless like very very few circumstances. So yeah, she'll do the same thing. She'll pick that up. Usually after a lot of other moves are maxed out. So yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense there. When I used to play Darkseer back in Dota 1, what my favorite build was?
Radiance?
Yes. That was literally my favorite build. Of course, it required quite a bit of farm. Oh, you know what else? I did either 2 things. I either did Radiance or Battle Fury.
You're a winner.
And I just pushed down lane so hard. And they had to send a few people to stop me. Because if you put your Iron Shell and then you cleave with your Battle Fury, dude, think about it.
Oh, trolls since Dota 1. Who'da thunk? Yeah, nope, I'm not even going to talk about that. I refuse. That was like the most troll item I could think of that you could make a troll argument for. And so that's exactly why it was correct, actually. There you go. Yeah. I wasn't actually planning on talking about this, so get surprised. The defense tournament, there are four groups, A, B, C, and believe it or not, D.
Huh.
Very interesting breakdown in the ratios of these groups. You have in Group A, MTW 5-0. Not as Vincere, which I haven't actually seen any games of. They are 4-0 in Group B. Group C, Dignitas 5-0, and Panzer is 4-1 in Group D. So these teams with nearly flawless records. Panzer, unfortunately, suffering the only loss of the top four teams. And then, interesting enough, you look at the bottom of the groups, and you have Roots 0-5 in Group 1, MUFC 0-5 in Group B, eHome 0-5 in Group C, and Mythtrust 0-4 in Group D. So, really interesting spreads there.
Yeah, I mean, that's bound to happen at times, especially with some of these teams that just practice a lot more than the other ones. And that kind of goes across the board with most MOBA games, probably video games in general. The more your team can get together, practice, and be prepared for these games. And the teams you've listed, except for that one team, actually, I don't even remember their name because I've never really heard of them. But and they might even be a remake of another team for all we know. But those teams have been in the competitive scene for a long time, even since back in Dota 1. So these guys have always been practicing with each other, a lot of experience, a lot of practice. And, it makes a lot of sense to me. But any game, anyone can win. That's the beauty of this. If you get outpicked or outplayed, it doesn't really matter if you're 5-0 going into this tournament. You can just still lose just so easily, just depending on how the other team feels like they're doing. Kind of like, I don't know, it feels, football. I'm going to throw football in here. You know why?
Go for it.
It's American football I'm talking about, not that European nonsense. I'm going to get some haters. Anyways, no, essentially, like, football, like, you look into the playoffs of football, some of these teams go like 15-1 or 16-1, just dominating all season. And you go in the playoffs, and just like last year, I'm going to mention a situation where one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl, all the way to the last game of the championship, ended up losing to a team that had a 8-8 record at the end of the season, something horrible that no one expected them to do well at all, and they got upset. And it just goes to show, like, any given day, some team can outperform another one. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, Natural 9 won BenQ, correct? I'm not remembering that wrong. And they're in Group B at 2-1. They lost a game, and the Midas Vincere, the team that unfortunately you and I know nothing about, they are at the top of Group B, undefeated. Trying to look for other team names that are kind of blowing my mind here. Myth Trust I've seen before, 0-4, unfortunate. eHome, I would have to imagine they're not playing Dota 2 very often. I seem to remember and talking about other tournaments, they've gotten to play 2 times since the international tournament, because I believe they're still doing work in Dota 1. Yeah. You see that a lot with. I actually remember that from StarCraft 2. Actually, it takes a long time to see Asian teams switch out into the sort of, I guess you could say, sequel game. They still like to stay in the first one as long as it's viable, and don't like messing around with the betas of the sort of next generation, so to speak. So, unfortunate to see them at 0-5.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's pretty rude.
Yep. I remember Team Shakira from ESWC.
Yes.
We casted some of their games, I believe.
Yes, we did.
So,
they were
3-1.
Team, yeah.
Yeah, 3-1 in Group C, underneath Team Dignitas, as we mentioned earlier, 5-0. So, very interesting. There's actually... This is just random stuff about the defense at this point. There was a team that got disqualified from the defense because they tried rescheduling 6 times, I believe it was. Join Dota was nice enough to reschedule them 5 times. 6th time, however, was the time too many. So they actually wound up getting disqualified from the tournament because they just...
It's just not professional.
No, it's not.
You gotta show up to play. I mean, I don't know. I'm surprised they gave him that many chances. But now maybe going forward, they can set some more standards. Like, okay, you get X amount, and if you hit that limit, too bad. I mean, I think 3 would have been more than enough. But they were nice guys over there, so props to them.
Fool me once, fool me 6 times.
Okay, I get a little bad.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to see how this tournament plays out. That is for sure. I don't have any more thoughts, I don't think. Do you, sir? I'm thought out.
well, I want to
Nothing
just
left
give a
up there.
little sneak peek into next week. We're gonna there has been no patch in the recent week and a half or so, but there was mention of a possible future patch coming up. No date yet tied in with that, but basically they are going to bring in a couple new heroes, and they made a few other little changes along the way. But essentially, that's going to be probably, hopefully, the focal point of our next cast. We'll get into more details about that. But so you'll want to tune into that to get more information on that. That is all I wanted to really say. How about you? You got anything?
No, I like where you went there, sir. Like I said, go check us out on Facebook. Go, please give us a nice little
I
like.
actually have a link on this background now.
Dang snap! Well, there you go.
So go
You can
there.
go, you can go check out that post, see what heroes are coming up if you don't know already. We like to post stuff there from time to time about Dota On Demand, and then of course anything that happens Dota 2 related. Yes, hopefully there will be a patch early enough that we can do our next podcast on that. Though we do want to try to get into a regular schedule. I promise that's going to happen. So I'm even going to say it. Are you free Tuesday, buddy? Are you free?
Oh boy, are you making me commit to something?
I am, and if not, I'm going to have a cardboard cutout that's going to make you answer whatever I want it to. So
That's kind of creepy. Okay,
it maybe just a little bit.
just don't put
Tuesday.
lipstick on it. Anyways,
Well, well, now that this is really creepy, Tuesday we are going to come to you guys with another podcast, whether it be about the patch or something I have to make up on the fly. It's gonna happen. Lay back and accept it.
just like sex
Anyway.
with Kobe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyway, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for podcast number 7, approaching those double digits pretty quick. We'll hopefully catch you guys next
like
time.
us on YouTube and subscribe, please, if you haven't already. We love you. Yeah, have a great day.